A journalist once asked me what I would like my epitaph to be, and I said, I think I would like it to be, he did very little harm. And that's not easy. Most people seem to me to do a great deal of harm. If I could be remembered as having done very little, that would suit me.
Paul Eddington didn't become a major name until he became the star of The Good Life and Yes Minister. These shows helped everyone realize how funny he could be. He wanted to do little harm while making the world laugh. At the same time, he was a private man who kept a lot inside. There was one secret he never told anyone but his closest family members about for years. Keep watching to learn about what Paul Eddington kept hidden until his final days. His early days. Paul Eddington was born in London on June 18, 1927. He became a lifelong pacifist due to his father's PTSD from World War I. He was a Quaker who registered as a conscientious objector. That allowed him to avoid service in WW2 as a teen. He was married early. He wed Patricia Scott in 1952, a woman who also received considerable praise from everyone who knew them.
Patricia Eddington is a remarkable woman, and I don't think for one moment that Paul would have had the success he had without her backup. She was absolutely the power behind that.
She was the root to the tree, if you like. I mean, every single thing he did and thought and said was filtered through her.
I heard my school was a co-educational boarding school founded in 1842. Rather interesting. And I heard that a girl with whom I had acted once or twice at school, and rather successfully from my point of view, had gone to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art and had decided to become a professional actress. And I was suddenly struck, like St. Paul, with this blinding light. Of course I must be an actor. And actually I hadn't realized what earn one's living. It was a most wonderful revelation.
Paul came from a family of artists, and he thought of following in their footsteps. He wanted to avoid being a starving artist, though, so he turned to commercial art. He got a temporary job as a window dresser for a store in Birmingham, which he hated. His Quaker education made him believe he couldn't be an actor. That changed when another student gave him a special revelation. As he said, Paul's career began when he joined the Sheffield Repertory Theatre. His first major TV role came in 1956. He played Tom Carr in an episode of Dixon of Dock Green called The Rotten Apple. Regular roles came after that. He played a different character in The Adventures of Robin Hood every week before regularly playing Will Scarlet in the 4th season from 1956 to 1960. He was a main cast member on 1968's Frontier and had a supporting role in 1968's The Devil Rides Out. He appeared in most episodes of the 1971 series Hind. He also played supporting parts in shows like The Avengers, The Prisoner, The Benny Hill Show, and Special Branch. The peak and end of his career. Paul didn't become a household name until The Good Life began screening in 1975. He played Jerry Leadbetter with Penelope Keith as his wife Margot. They were neighbors to the main character. Their part was meant to be small, but the Leadbetters served as great foils to the main character. Their role was expanded, and it's one of the parts he's best remembered for. Paul's other best-known role was Jim Hacker in Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister. These shows ran from 1980 to 84 and 1986 to 88, respectively. They got him shortlisted 4 times for a BAFTA Award for Best Light Entertainment Performance, but lost to co-star Nigel Hawthorne each time. His final days. Paul's final roles included an episode of The Wrong Goodbye in 1989, the TV dramatization of The Chamomile Lawn in 92, and an adaptation of Henry IV, Parts 1 and 2 in 95, as well as Home in 94. He also voiced the role of Badger in The Adventures of Mole and Justice Shallow in Henry IV in 1995. British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher was one of his biggest fans. She made Paul an honorary Commander of the Order of the British Empire in 1987. He and his castmates even performed for the Queen. He published an autobiography called So Far, So Good in 1995. It was a deep look into the most personal parts of his life, but there was one secret even it wouldn't fully expose. The secret he kept hidden. Paul had diabetes most of his life. He managed to regulate his sugar enough to live with it, but there was another major health condition he kept secret. Paul was diagnosed with mycosis fungicides, also known as Albert-Bazin syndrome or granulosa fungicides, when he was 28. It's a non-inheritable and very rare condition that affects only 1 in about 350,000 people. There are 3.6 million cases per year in the world. It's twice as likely in males and more likely in adults over 50, though there have been cases observed in children. It starts in the blood and then begins to affect the skin. Cancerous T cells in the blood begin to cause different types of skin lesions. They can develop from small patches into raised lesions called plaques. They can also spread from the skin to the organs like the lymph nodes, spleen, liver, and lungs. Paul and his family decided to keep the condition secret. They knew it would cause his death eventually, but he survived an impressive 4 decades with it. He also continued to perform despite it. He'd sometimes have to leave the set of Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister for 10 minutes. His castmates could tell he was in distress, but he never complained about it. All he'd complain about was the traffic on the way to work. He continued on TV and didn't leave the stage behind either. His final stage performance was in a touring production of Home, a play about 4 elderly patients in a mental institution. It was during this production that the family was forced to address his condition. It was necessary to respond to press speculation about his rapidly darkening skin and hair loss. As he said,
I thought I would say nothing about it because it didn't affect me or my work all that much, and tried to keep things to myself. Unfortunately, rumours started to get around, and somebody from the News of the World had his foot in my door before very long, and I kept them at bay for as long as I could, and they were really making my life very uncomfortable, and I was peering out of the window to see if anybody was around before making a dash for my car and things like that. And eventually my agent said, "Oh, I think you'd better hire a publicist and come clean," so that's what I did. And actually it worked quite well, because the excitement died down. I think they were hoping against hope that I might have AIDS. You see, I mean, respectable married man, grown-up family, it'd be a lovely story, wouldn't it? And disappointed, they turned away.
He told the public the truth about his condition, but reassured them he was doing fine. He said, quote, "I have thought of dying, but I am not scared, and I am not expecting to die yet. I have skin cancer, but I am not going to compete with Roy Castle." The BBC aired a special edition of Face to Face on October 30th, 1995. He discussed his early life, career, and his secret struggle with cancer. In that episode, he was asked how he wanted to be remembered. He came up with his own fitting epitaph about wanting to do very little harm. It's now one of his most remembered quotes. His death. Paul Eddington died November 4th, 1995. There was a memorial service held for him at St. Paul's Church, Covent Garden, on February 29, 1996. There was also a private family funeral for the private man and his family. He was survived by Patricia, his wife of 43 years, and their 4 children, Toby, Hugo, Dominic, and Gemma. Tributes to the fallen star. Paul is one of the most beloved stars of British sitcom comedy. He was so loved, many fellow celebrities and major names came out with tributes to him after his death. Margaret Thatcher had touching words for the man she'd made an honorary commander. She said, quote, "Paul Eddington was an essential part of that magnificent team of actors who brought Anthony J. and Jonathan Lynn's superb scripts to life, and who made Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister such an enormous success." His former co-stars also had nothing but positive things to say about him.
I have been very lucky to have quite a few meaningful, in that they are very special relationships that I've worked with in my working life. And his is certainly up there in the top, way up there.
I remember him with great affection and great respect.
He made me laugh. He made me laugh a lot.
Well, he was a great personal friend, godfather to one of my children. I loved him. I thought he was a smashing man, and I wish there were more of his kind about.
He was a great friend of mine, and at the moment Trish have become great friends of ours, so it's nice it continues on.
Derek Nimmo also remembered Paul's sense of humor and convivial nature. They were both Garrick Club members together. Now it's time to hear from you. Who's your favorite British sitcom star? Let us know in the comments section below.